All right. Good morning, folks. We are back in the Digital Weather Center. I'm News 6 meteorologist David Nazario, back with the latest on Hurricane Raphael, a quickly up and coming hurricane. To tell you the truth, last night during the election process, which was already a fireworks show across the United States to begin with, Raphael has quickly gotten its act together and is really fast. I would say more than rapid intensifying before it gets to Cuba. We saw it manifest itself from a mid-grade tropical storm yesterday, and today it is probably already at major hurricane status, to tell you the truth. So good morning to those of us, or to those of you joining us over on the News 6 Plus, as well as the News 6 YouTube channel. Kevin Hawthorne, I see you in there. He says, good morning from Lakeland, Florida. We're kind of neighbors. I'm 45 minutes away from Lakeland myself. And then over on the Just Weather page, we have No Autumn and Melissa Riley saying a wonderful good morning to us. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get us started. So first and foremost, this is the latest information that we have on Raphael. You can see that the cone has shifted even further to the left in this case. Now, I kind of give that little bit of an eyebrow raise, because if you tuned in yesterday, I'd mentioned we could likely see this shift a bit more to the right. And in this case, Raphael said, to heck with what that guy said. I'm going to go against the grain and attempt to make history here. So you can see that we are expecting a major hurricane to make landfall into Cuba. Right now, the islands just to the immediate south of the Cuban island are being pummeled by a quickly intensifying Hurricane Raphael. The National Hurricane Center just might still be on the conservative side with that 115 mile an hour forecast as of tonight at 7 p.m. as it prepares to exit the Cuban coastline and move into the southeast Gulf of Mexico. Right now, per the National Hurricane Center, we are sitting at a whopping 110 miles an hour, gusting higher than that, well into major hurricane status. So not only has Raphael set a record in terms of just the most total hurricanes that have formed past the peak of hurricane season, which per the calendar, according to Dr. Philip Klotzbach at CSU, ends around September 25th, give or take. But we're also about to see another major hurricane to add to our number of major hurricanes that we've had this hurricane season. And thankfully, it won't be impacting the United States as a major hurricane, but dare I say, sad for the folks down there in Cuba who have already had it rough as it is, whether it be the hurricane season or not. We're about to have another major hurricane landfall for that area as well, after we've already dealt battle with Raphael down in the Cayman Islands. I'm going to pull you over to the infrared satellite now, and I want us to kind of just take in what it is that we saw happen over the last 24 hours. I have this looping to encompass a 24-hour period, and if you look closely, you can see that we went from a fairly shrimpy-looking tropical storm to a buzzsaw of a hurricane, and it has that, quote, look of a major hurricane. And the sad reality here is, folks, is whenever you see that pinhole eye, that tiny little eye feature, we're not talking a very gaping hole in the center of the storm. This is very reminiscent of what we saw with Milton before it explosively intensified to Category 5 status. We are going to run into land here very soon, within the next 2 to 4 hours, so that's good news. We're not going to see it realize that level of intensity like we saw with Helene, with Milton, with Beryl even last time we had a major system working its way through the entirety of the Caribbean Sea. But because this system has more or less, I'll use air quotes, shed its skin and gotten rid of a lot of that broad, low-pressure kind of structuring, we've seen it tighten up into this ball of very fast rotating vorticity, tropical energy, tropical thunderstorms, and that tiny little pinhole eye is precisely why this thing is spinning up as fast as it is. So you can see here, and I'll actually go ahead and stop the loop so I can take you on down in there, and I'll zoom us in so you can see when it is that that eye feature manifested itself. I'll go ahead and take myself out of the camera so you can see a little bit better. And once I fast forward the loop, there it is right there, front and center. Look at how small that eye is. To put it into perspective, we have Nueva Gerona just to the immediate west of that eye feature. I mean, look at that thing. Perfectly symmetrical, tiny. I would imagine it's no more than 5 to 10 nautical miles wide. And it has very strong eye wall thunderstorms within it. So this system is going to pack a fair bit of a punch as it makes landfall into Cuba. Moving right along, we're going to take a look at our latest spaghetti models. Now, I will admit the spaghetti plots for this system have definitely kind of thrown us all for a loop. This just doesn't happen, and I'm not normally one to say that, but this really just doesn't happen in the month of November, historically speaking, which we have a web article coming off the press here momentarily. Y'all can check that out over on a News 6 app, discussing historically what tends to happen when these tropical cyclones get going in the month of November. Realistically, they usually all hit Florida. So, historically speaking, we are dodging a major bullet, no pun intended here. So, I'll roll the clock forward, and you can see these are our in-house spaghetti plots. Huge fanning out effect still. We have one, if not two, individual members that try to take it more so into Florida. We have that one spaghetti plot that kind of pushes it right along the border of the Big Bend, not the Big Bend, I'm sorry, the Panhandle, the westernmost tip of the Panhandle of Florida into almost Alabama. But then watch this. If I fast forward just a little bit more, look at what a large majority of them do. They start to dip down towards the southwest, which never usually happens. I'll go ahead and pan us on over to our in-house. These are our hurricane app spaghetti models that are available for your situational awareness. And if I take you out in time with those, you kind of see the same effect going on here. We have the same members that kind of come back, very reminiscent of November. They're the outliers in this case, but look at that tight clustering that sends this system off towards the west into the western Gulf of Mexico. Now, the kicker to that, and I want to zoom myself in so I can really communicate this message to you all, because I know there's a lot of folks out there in Louisiana. There's a lot of you watching from Texas if you're over on the Just Weather page. If this were to try to proceed more northerly once it gets to the western Gulf of Mexico, it will receive the leading edge of a lot of wind shear and a lot of dry air. So the National Hurricane Center, if you recall the cone when I'd pulled it up, still had it going from a major hurricane impacting Cuba to a mid-grade tropical storm by the time it works its way this far to the west. I'll go ahead and pull the graphic back up so you can see. So by the time it actually gets to this point in the Gulf of Mexico, we're looking at a much weaker iteration of this feature, to where if it did try to lift back up towards the Louisiana area, or dare I say back towards Corpus Christi or Houston, anywhere in between, it will be a mere shadow of its former self. The November pattern that typically steers these storms towards Florida are ruthless. They're not going to allow a major hurricane, not even a hurricane, truthfully, with how sensitive they are as weather features, to boil down and try to come at you guys with, hellacious intent, or, what is it that Mike Tyson used to say, with the bad intentions, So with that being said, we're going to walk you on over to our upper level pattern. We're going to dissect this just a little bit before we get ready to take our first break, and then we'll move into a quick question and answer session. We didn't get enough time to do that yesterday, so I want to make sure I hash out enough of that period to answer everybody's questions to the best of my ability. So this is what we're looking at right now in terms of the steering, and even this in of itself doesn't quite make sense for the time of year. If you look, we have a trough over the Four Corners area. I'm looking up towards where you can see Denver, San Francisco, Los Angeles on the map, the Four Corners states, not the counties here in Central Florida, but the states over in the Rockies. You see where those shades of blue and that circular spin, that bubble right over the Four Corners borders, that's a trough that's coming in that's expected to sweep through the Great Plains and maybe create another severe weather event for our friends out there, our neighbors out over the Plains Tornado Alley, which is typical. That's the one thing that we can say is behaving normally this time of year. Usually as we go through fall and start getting into winter time, the tornado season tends to ramp back up. But if you look at that high pressure, that Bermuda high, that's keeping things really warm, really muggy out here. I don't know if you all stepped outside today here in Central Florida, but as soon as I left the door, I said, I'm taking the car with AC. I was sweating buckets, had to already go back inside to take another shower. I hadn't even gone to the gym yet. So this is what's going to be influencing the path of Milton as it moves off towards the northwest. If you notice, that ridge broadens out. And for those of you who may not know what I mean when I say broaden out, if you remember, if I rewind it, we had the ridge looking more like this. It looked like a mountain right up against the eastern seaboard of the United States. Notice how now we've seen it broaden out west to east like so. And as a result, I'm not too sure if where you're watching from, I'll zoom you on in so you can see a little bit better. Not too sure if you can see, but the winds around this high pressure flow clockwise. So as it broadens out, it creates a force field, a shield up against the southeast United States. Here is Raphael. I'm going to draw my little hurricane icon, even though it looks more like a lopsided mustache, to tell you the truth. That's what's going to move it off towards the west. And then the kicker here is the trough over the west. Is that going to once again try to eject it back towards the north, making a landfall somewhere between Mississippi and Texas? Or is this ridge of high pressure going to dominate the weather pattern and crash this thing into the Bay of Campeche? Believe it or not, the hurricane models do just that. The H-Wharf, the HAFS-A and B, the H-Mon, all of them have this thing deepening back into a major system and then crashing into central Mexico upon its entry into the Bay of Campeche. So a very weird setup indeed. This is definitely not something you typically see this time of year. We have honestly since recorded hurricane history back into 1850. We've never seen a storm go that far to the west in the Gulf of Mexico, let alone ever make landfall outside of Florida. We had one storm over the last 150 plus years that has made landfall in Louisiana. Otherwise, every other named storm, and I want to put a little extra energy into that to show you just how weird this is. Every other named storm, from unnamed storms in the 1800s all the way to the late 2020s, has always come towards Florida. You remember Nicole in 2022, Florida. Back in 2020, we had a couple of very late season storms. They came towards Florida. We have never seen a tropical cyclone, let alone a hurricane of this magnitude, go in this type of direction. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get ready to take our first break. We'll be back here momentarily in about 2 or so minutes, so have your questions ready. We'll probably look at a couple of additional graphics, but I want to make sure we have at least 5 or so minutes to kind of conversate with one another and talk closely and kind of get you the information that you need, especially since this thing is just not behaving itself. It's going entirely as against the grain as you possibly could. So we'll see you again very soon. Don't you go anywhere. We'll be right back. Alrighty, everybody, we are back. Those 2 minutes, they feel, I swear, like 20 seconds to tell you the truth. So we've talked a little bit about Raphael. I should say we've kind of gotten into the weeds with Raphael, but Raphael is unfortunately not the only little tropical feature out there that us here at the Pinpoint Weather Team are taking a look at. So with that being said, let me bring you on in. This is our National Hurricane Center outlook, valid for the 10 o'clock outlook as well. You can see Raphael churning out there at the 110 mile an hour sustained winds, gusting higher than that, approaching its Cuba landfall. But then we still have this yellow blip with the formation chances still in the yellow phase, the lemon phase. However, they have gone up just a little bit. me go ahead and zoom you in so you can take a closer look. We have a 20% chance this tries to do a little something over the next 2 days. So as we get ready to start the weekend late into Friday, and then this time next week, perhaps Wednesday, National Hurricane Center giving it a vote of confidence of about 30%, which, doesn't look like too much. And right now, our models are extremely wishy-washy about this. We're kind of riding the outer boundary of that high pressure that's situated over Bermuda. It is a little bit frontal in nature, so it might take a little more oomph to get this thing going. And for the fact that Raphael is as boisterous of a tropical cyclone as it is, when you think about it, where this feature is, this is it right here. It's going to be wandering off towards the west-northwest. And with Raphael and all this outflow blasting off from the center of this storm, wrapping back around the east side of it, what that's going to do is increase the hostility in the environment out ahead of this area of interest. It's not an invest yet. It might try. Hopefully we get a little invest out of this so we can get some higher res model data. But for the time being, it's just a yellow AOI that's also on the National Hurricane Center's chart. What I'd like to bring to your attention as our kind of concluding slide here is going to be the tropical depression formations. So right off the rip, you can see here we have this small area of maybe 20% development probabilities. But then look down here near the Windward Islands. This has kind of been going up, and I'll go ahead and draw a couple arrows just for the sake of animating it for you all. This is a new feature that is kind of gaining some model support, and it has kind of perked up a little bit over the last 24 hours. I'll take you in for a closer look. So we actually have, believe it or not just one, but two different areas that are going to be marching off towards the west-northwest that we need to watch for over the next 7 days. This giant blob of red, obviously, is Raphael. You can see even the European probabilities take it well off towards the west, headed towards Mexico, the southern tip of Texas, maybe. That's a big maybe, but also aimed more so down towards the Bay of Campeche. So as we go forward in time, watch what happens here, especially with that blip that moves through the Windward Islands. If you notice, we start to gain just a little bit more confidence with that feature moving through the Turks and Caicos, but then look at how the Caribbean once again starts to really ramp up. This was definitely an increase between yesterday and today when we last met. If you look, the probabilities down there are up to 35%. Obviously, 35% isn't much on the surface, but this is exactly where Raphael started. If you've been tuning in for our tropical updates, whether it be Jonathan or myself over on Just Weather specifically or here at News 6, we started talking about how the euro felt maybe a 10%, 20%, and then all of a sudden we were up to 70, 90, and Raphael. So we're not fully sold that something's going to form down there, but we're already seeing the mixed signals, that hot and cold type of vibe from a lot of our global models suggesting the Caribbean could still try to throw another tropical low pressure at us over the next 7 to 10 days. So hurricane season still alive and well, even as we get into the middle portions of November. I talked you through yesterday how the environment does seem a little bit more conducive for tropical activity as we get closer and closer to Thanksgiving and Black Friday. But I will openly tell you, we're not expecting tropical activity all the way through to the Thanksgiving holiday. So obviously, if things change, we'll let you know. We'll keep you updated here at News 6 WKMG. You can always count on us for your accurate and pinpoint weather material. But I've gone full screen again because I'd love to ask some questions. So, or not ask, answer. I do have questions for y'all, but unfortunately this isn't a two-way conversation. We can try to make it as much of one as possible. So I'll go ahead and turn my attention over to the screen to my left and see if we have some questions that we can get answered. Not a whole lot of chatter over on the News 6 YouTube channel. Bit of a shame. It's always nice to have folks tuning in from the local area. If there is anybody watching right now, feel free to throw some questions in the chat. But let's go ahead and take a look at Just Weather. Melissa Riley saying once again a good morning. Zachary Berger over on Just Weather. Good morning from Port St. Lucie. Good to have you with us. Twilight Firefly 100, it's good to see you, always tuning in. Kevin Rivera, good morning, good to see you. Kevin Rivera tunes in from Puerto Rico, one of our faithful viewers down there. There is a spin east of the island. Yes, Kevin Rivera over on Just Weather. It looks like we have that AOI to your northeast, and then we're also watching that low perturbation, we'll call it, wandering through the Lesser Antilles. That's going to move just to your south. Might increase some of the shower and storm coverage for your area, but we're not expecting anything big to come of it until it gets to that same general spot that we saw Raphael start to cook off a couple of days ago. Dale, can you show us the northern weather fronts that are actually pushing this storm back, which is steadying it down? Do you mean slowing it down? I absolutely can do that. So I'll go ahead and leave myself full screen. Make sure to refresh this so I can pull you over to the desktop. And there you have it. Look at that monstrosity of a trough that's working its way through the four corners. That's the same one that I had shown you before. It does have a positive tilt to it, and a positive tilt means it's not as progressive, which is probably why the models are thinking this feature could go more west than north. Positive tilt means that the base, the bottom of it, is more towards the southwest, and the top of it, where that cool air is kind of funneling down into the trough itself, is up to its northeast. It's kind of tilted like this, or I should say like this, for those of you watching. Now, negative tilt would be the opposite of that. That's when it's a little bit more progressive. It's moving faster, has a little more cold air, more oomph to it, which is what meteorologists tend to look out for when forecasting severe weather for the plains, or as we saw last year during our El Nino winter, we had some action down here in the state of Florida because of those negatively tilted troughs ripping through the southern plains, and then they kind of added to that rockin' severe weather phenomena for the panhandle. Julia over on Just Weather. Weird question, or no, what's next week's outlook for tropical weather hitting Florida? So nothing's hitting Florida right now, thankfully. We are crystal clear. We have some tropical moisture coming up, but since you mentioned outlook, I'm going to do a quick little Google search while you all bring up some questions. Let me go ahead and merge myself over again so you don't look at my search history. No, I'm just kidding. So you don't see me typing away over here and taking away from the live stream. I just want to see if we've updated our global tropics hazards for maybe a future show. Dale, could that blue area you were showing us not force it more southwest, pushing it into Mexico, then pull it in? Absolutely, and that's kind of what we broke down a little while ago, that this feature could maybe try to wander more north than west, or let alone southwesterly. So here we go. Let's go ahead and pull this up for you all. I'm going to have to reposition the screen just a little bit so you can see. So bear with me while you drop some questions in. Just want to make sure to double check that we aren't running out of time or anything like that. Still have plenty of time with you all, so perfect. Let me just adjust the screen a little bit. Melissa Riley, hey David, over on Just Weather, do you think we're going to get any more hurricanes before the hurricane season is over? Well, Melissa, I hate to sound like that guy, but because of the fact that historically speaking, we typically see systems hit Florida during the month of November, it's anybody's best guess. And the reason I say anybody's best guess is right now we do have a couple of features that we're watching, but nothing concrete in terms of development. If we do start to see more in the way of development, then obviously I would highly encourage all of us here in Central Florida watch that feature closely. So back over to Julia's question. I brought this up. This is our latest Global Tropics Hazards Outlook brought to us by Climate Prediction Center. And you can see that they're kind of seeing the same thing we just talked about. There are signs and signals that the environment may still be favorable enough to get a tropical cyclone or two. Sarah would be the next name on the list, hopefully not slamming anybody anytime soon, but you can see all the way through to just shy of the Thanksgiving holiday there. That bottom chart is valid for November 20th through the 26th. There is still an above 20% shot, but less than 40 that we might see another tropical cyclone. Could be a depression, could be a PTC, could be a hurricane. This chart doesn't go that deep into the weeds, so when you see the red shading, it just means tropical low pressure, varying in size and shape. Ashley over on News 6, I don't like that track. Are you talking about the Raphael or any of the new graphics that I had pulled up? Kind of elaborate on that, because right now we don't have anything coming towards Florida. We're making history in a bittersweet way. Florida's dodging a bullet, but somebody else is unfortunately going to receive this storm. The Hive, are we going to be in La Nina next hurricane season? A fantastic question. So I will eventually work with Jonathan to produce with you all a bit of content once we have fully wrapped up this hurricane season. We're not going to talk next hurricane season or anything like that when we're still looking at 2024 staring us in the face with yellow blips or the potential for more development. But we will be working on a next hurricane season kind of a look-see as we go down the line. Let's see. Ashley over on News 6, I completely understand. Lisa Brown, what about Mobile Bay? So we're not going to dive into full specifics on landfall just yet. We're kind of running out of time here. So with that being said, we're going to start closing out the live stream. I really do sincerely appreciate everybody out there being such a wonderful audience as always. Thank you for taking some time out of your Wednesday to join me on this beautiful hump day post-election. We can put that behind us, and we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time, same place here at the Digital Weather Center on News 6. If you have any additional questions, comments, or concerns, leave them in the comments section down below on our YouTube live streams, both News 6 and Just Weather, and we'll get back to you as early as we possibly can. But until next time, this is the Digital Weather Center signing out.